This is a lens from 1976, and I've been using it on my modern cameras. Brilliant idea? Total waste of time? Well, the photos look like this. One of the great things about a modern mirrorless camera is that the flange distance is super short. Now there's a technical explanation there that could be an entire video by itself, but what you need to know for today's lesson is that that means you can take any old vintage lens like this, mount it to your modern camera, and it's pretty much going to work. It can be a really great way to explore more creative options for your photography, and if you're mounting that lens to a body like this Fujifilm or a Nikon ZF, then it'll really complete that vintage aesthetic because it literally is a vintage lens. But there are a few important things to consider, so in today's video I'm going to go through 4 important points that you should probably think about before you jump in with both feet. But before we start, I do want to say that if you like this sort of content, a like on the video would be greatly appreciated and a sub to the channel would be even better. But let's dive in. The first thing I want to talk about is how to choose the right lens. Now this one that I have here was actually a hand-me-down from my dad, but if you spend enough time going around vintage markets or thrift stores or even looking on Facebook Marketplace or eBay, you're gonna come across a bargain eventually. But there are a few things to keep in mind. The most important one to watch out for is any signs of fungus. You see, if a lens hasn't been taken good care of, it's gonna have some nasty things growing inside it, so if you see anything that looks like this or this, then stay well clear. This is not the sort of thing that can be repaired easily. It will ruin the look of your photos, and in a worst case scenario, that little growth could actually spread to the inside of your camera, and we really don't want that happening. So if you see anything that looks like that, just hard avoid. On the other side of that coin though, a few scratches on the lens actually aren't that much of an issue. You would be surprised at how beaten up a lens can look while still producing really good results. And let's face it, if you're using a lens that's 45 years old, it's more than likely going to have seen a few things. Finding something that's in perfect condition normally means you're going to be paying much more than you actually need to get the exact same results. The last thing to check for is that all of the controls are working properly, especially the focus ring. You want to make sure that turns nice and smoothly. If it doesn't, you're going to have a pretty bad time with that lens because most of these older lenses are manual focus only. After you've chosen your lens, the next thing you're going to need is an adapter. You can think of this as a bit like a translator. The lens and the camera don't speak the same language, so they need this little interpreter that goes in the middle. Now, these can be really cheap, and they don't have to be expensive at all. The golden rule to follow here is that it either works or it doesn't. There is basically no value add in buying the more expensive adapters, so literally you can just find the cheapest one and be completely fine. If it works at all, then it works. The one caveat to that is that you can get some newer lenses that have autofocus capabilities, and you would need an autofocus adapter to get that to work with your new camera. However, those autofocus adapters tend to be so expensive that you're better off spending that money on glass that was meant to go in your camera in the first place. So my opinion with that is to not bother. Unless there's an old lens that you really, really want to use, it tends to not be worth the money to buy one of those autofocus adapters. Other than that, the only thing you need to be aware of is that you're getting the right thing. This lens is a Canon FD lens, and this camera uses the Fujifilm X mount. So we need to get an adapter that makes FD talk to X. The adapters aren't reversible though, so make sure you're getting one that's going in the right direction. I wouldn't want you going out there and buying the wrong thing and then being sad when it doesn't work. So you've got your lens, you've got the adapter, and you've mounted it to your camera. What's next? Well, there are a few more settings that you have to go over before you actually take this out into the field to make sure it's going to work how you want it to. The things I'm going to go over here may be a little bit Fujifilm specific, but most camera brands will have something along these lines that you have to do, so either read your manual, have a Google search, or just ask on Reddit if you're feeling lazy. They won't like you for it, but you will get an answer. The first one is quite obvious. You have to set your focus mode selector to M. These are manual lenses, so you have to make sure you're in manual focus. Secondly, and much less obviously, is to enable this setting that says shoot without lens. If you're using an adapted lens, then the camera will think it doesn't have a lens on it. So by default, the shutter won't fire, so you have to change this setting or it literally won't work at all. This is super important, so I'm going to say it twice. You have to go into your settings and activate the option that says shoot without lens. Make sure you've done that. The third one is optional, but you should tell the camera which focal length you're using. All this really does is save the focal length to the EXIF data, so if you look at the photos later, you've got a reminder of which lens you used. It is worth doing, but if you swap lenses a lot and you forget occasionally, it really isn't the end of the world. It doesn't have any effect on the image, it's just metadata. As I mentioned a couple of times earlier, most older lenses are manual focus only, so you want to make sure that you familiarize yourself with your camera's manual focus assist options so that you can reliably nail focus more often than not. Personally, my camera has 3 of these options. There's focus peaking, which highlights everything that's in focus in a color of your choice. There's also split image and a microprism setting, which are meant to mimic the experience of using a rangefinder, but in reality I just find these a bit underwhelming. Personally, I just stick to the focus peaking, and I like to have it in red, although if I'm taking photos of something that is red, I'll swap it to another color. As a little bonus, you can set up a shortcut button that punches into the middle of the image and allows you to check that the focus is nice and sharp. This can be really good if you're doing product photography or portrait shoots or something like that you really want to make sure you've got sharp focus and you've got time to check it. And of course, one of the benefits of using a manual-only lens is that it's going to have really good range markers on it. That means you can pretty reliably use zone focusing. If you don't know what that is, it is a technique that's well worth learning, so if enough of you want that, then let me know in the comments and I'll make a follow-up video explaining how to do it. So what do we think? Has this video inspired you to take a trip down to your local thrift store and try and find a bargain? Have you got any vintage lenses already that you love using? I would love to know your stories, so do let me know in the comments. And also, once again, if you have enjoyed this video, a like would be great. If you've loved it, then a subscribe would be even better. But until then, I will see you in the next one. Peace out for now.